Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Fanfic Guy, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Becomes Black Rabbit Vigilante. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. High on a rooftop on one of many skyscrapers in his city stood the infamous vigilante, Black Rabbit, which was a rather odd name, considering his suit was green. He had evaded capture for months, going against pro-heroes such as Eraserhead and Midnight, which were the two he'd faced and deemed hardest to escape from. He smirked at the thought of Eraserhead catching him. He couldn't do him any harm without his scarf. Black Rabbit was quirkless. Mandatory All Might flashback. All Might frowned. No, you cannot become a hero without a quirk. It's simply too dangerous. He smiled at the small boy in front of him. I'm sorry, young man. Midoriya stopped looking up to All Might that day. He would prove him wrong. He would do everything in his power to spite All Might. End mandatory flashback. Midoriya woke up in a cold sweat. He brushed it off as just anxiety again, and started getting ready for school. He was currently enrolled in the General Studies course at UA, much to Bakugo's, a childhood friend, dismay. Midoriya ran off to school, almost running late. His two best friends, Hatsum Mei and Shinso Hitoshi, met him at the front gate. Midoriya! Hatsum shouted. He quickly ran over to the two and started walking inside with them. Are you ready to behold the absolute radiance of my newest babies? She held up numerous pieces of support gear. Shinso shrugged. It isn't that impressive, Hatsum. It's just the hero course. Of course they'd want you make their gear. He leaned closer to Midoriya. She's not modest at all, you know. She wouldn't stop taking about it before you showed up. Well, she should be proud. It's the hero course. They'll probably use her gear for a long time. Midoriya looked over at Hatsum and smiled. She was still rambling on about the gear. Hatsum! She snapped out of her train of thought. Yeah? What is it, Midoriya? I broke some gear I was working on, and I don't quite remember how to fix it? He voice lowered to just above a whisper. She laughed. Of course. I'll help you to the best of my abilities. She looked up. Oh, it's my stop. See you two at lunch. She said before entering 1H. The two continued on until they had reached Class 1C. They went in, sat down, and the day continued as normal, which was mostly boring and long. By the time lunch had started, he felt like he would pass out. Midoriya got his lunch, then found his two friends sitting at one of the few tables next to a window. He sat down next to Hatsum. So, Midoriya. Hatsum said in between bites of her lunch. What support gear am I helping you fix, exactly? Well. He paused. You know that vigilante, Black Rabbit? I tried to make a copy of his support gear, you know, because his is really cool, and I wanted to try my hand at doing something I haven't done before, but it blew up in my face. He laughed. Oh my gosh, you're all right? Yeah, don't worry about it, Hatsum. I'm fine really. Okay. She eyed him suspiciously. So, just to clarify, we're meeting at your house directly after school, correct? Yeah, that was the plan at least. Alright, I guess I'll see you then. She finished the last few bites of her food before clarifying. I have to go work on my babies for the hero course. With that, she left. The day ended before Midoriya knew it. It sped by him almost as quickly as it would if you were actually enjoying yourself. Hatsum met him at the front gate once again, Shinso long gone, as he left while Midoriya was getting his books out of his locker. The duo walked to Midoriya's house, which was a walk spent almost entirely in silence. It was unlike the two to be silent together, but there wasn't much to talk about. When they finally arrived, and that awkward silence finally ended, Midoriya opened his door. Inko was watching the news, but she turned to see the two at the door. Izuku, how was school? Great like always. How was your day, Hatsum? She asked. It was fine, thank you for asking, Ms. Midoriya. Please, call me Inko. Izuku, you should have told me you were going to bring Hatsum along today. I would have made Katsudon. A chorus of sorry was heard as the duo flew up the stairs to Izuku's room. So, where is it? Give me a second. Let me put my bag down first. Which he did, Then he went to his closet and pulled out a piece of fabric covered in technology, all ripped to shreds. I thought you said it exploded. Oh, it didn't explode. Someone else did. He trailed off. She knew he was more than likely referring to Bakugo, as the two could often be found under the same roof due to their mother's friendship. They went to work trying to repair the gear, although it was proving difficult. Its circuitry had to be replaced entirely, and she ended up sewing the glove back together instead of replacing it, giving it a bit of extra flair. After an hour or two, it looked good as new. Thank you for helping me with this, handsome. Midoriya picked up the glove. It almost looks like the real thing. He smiled at Hatsum. Anytime. She looked over at his clock. 6 o'clock already? I've got to get home, but I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye, Midoriya. After the two said their goodbyes and Hatsum was out the door, he sighed. He took the box where he stashed his gear out of his closet and laid it on his bed. Midoriya put the one glove back in the box with the rest of the set. She still has no idea what he was getting himself into. Black Rabbit went out that night. He made his usual way around town, looking for trouble. He hopped across the rooftops. They seemed almost endless tonight. It was more therapeutic than he would like to admit, and unlike usual, no one was chasing him today, hero or villain. He ended up sitting down on one of the few rooftops with a garden on the top to catch his breath. Nice view up here, huh? Black Rabbit jumped into a defensive position only to see Eraserhead waking towards him. He internally cursed, as Eraserhead was one of the more difficult heroes to escape from. Relax, I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to have a little chat. He stood next to Black Rabbit, taking in the view. So, Black Rabbit, I have a proposition. He looked over to the Vigilante. I want to know your identity and your quirk, or quirks. In exchange, I won't chase you down nor report you. What do you say? This has to be a trap, circled through his mind. He'd probably be ambushed, the heroes using Eraserhead as bait. That would be a new low, especially for all the heroes involved when he would escape again. Yet nothing seemed more out of place than that creepy smile on Eraserhead's face. That's extremely out of character, even for you, Eraser. He chucked. The Eraserhead I know wouldn't hesitate to detain me. He smiled in return. You got me, Black Rabbit. I'm not Eraserhead. My name is Toga Himiko, and I can copy the appearance and voice of whoever's blood I ingest. Okay, not Eraser, what are you here to do then? I want to know who you are. I told you who I am. It's only polite you do the same. Sorry, not Eraser, I'm not telling you anything. But Rabbit-chan, I told everyone I'd get to know something about you. She whined. The way she said it sounded so out of place in Eraserhead's voice. That's too bad then. I'm not telling you anything. Fine, Black Rabbit. Hey, by the way, why are you called Black Rabbit? Your suit is clearly green. Was that intentional or did you not name yourself? She asked. The questions flowed out of her mouth almost endlessly. After a while, it turned back into her normal self. To his surprise, though, she was actually just a small blonde girl that he had seen once or twice before on the street. He gazed in astonishment. He had thought it was just a ploy to get him to turn himself in or something, but no, she was real. She noticed she wasn't Eraser anymore and froze. Looks like I'll have to go now. See you later, Rabbitin. And with that, she disappeared. That was one of the weirder quirks he had ever seen. For all he knew, if she was honest about her quirk, she could have tried to get a blood sample from him when his back was turned. He quickly checked, but didn't seem to find anything. If he were to see her again, she could be a real threat to his identity. The rest of the night was uneventful. He stopped a convenience store robbery, but the rest of the night was patrol. He was getting at most 5 hours of sleep on the nights he patrolled, which was not nearly enough, and it showed. Around 3 a.m., he headed back to his house. Tired as he was, falling asleep on the ground was not an option. When he reached his house, he entered through the window to avoid his mother if she happened to be awake, although he only left when he was certain she was asleep. He didn't even notice that Toga had been trailing him. He shut his window and started to take off his disguise. He pulled off his mask, revealing his green hair that seemed to perfectly match the color of his suit. That was all Toga really needed, so she left, making a note of the address. She'd come back later. When Midoriya finally put away all of his vigilante gear, he collapsed into bed. He passed out on contact with his mattress. "Izuku, wake up. You're going to be late." He groaned. He hadn't nearly gotten as much sleep as he needed, but he got up anyways. Midoriya got ready for school as quick as he could, went downstairs and grabbed some toast to eat on the way, and ran to school. No one greeted him at the gate today. The bell for class had probably already rung. He trudged his way to class, rubbing his eyes. When Midoriya finally got there, he ignored the inquiring stares he got as he walked to his seat. He was never late. Lunch came faster than normal. Shinso said basically nothing to him all day, but that was normal. "Midoriya, you were late this morning. I thought you were deathly ill or something." Hatsum yelled when she saw him at lunch. "No, sorry, Hatsum." He laughed. "I was up late last night and overslept." "That sucks to be you, I guess," Shinso said to him for the first time that day. Hatsum gasped. "Shinso, you aren't mute." "Yeah, just eat your food." The rest of the day went relatively uneventful. After lunch, their teacher announced that the UA Sports Festival would be occurring next week, regardless of the villain attack the hero course dealt with a couple of weeks ago. Last period was a free period, so all he heard was his classmates taking about the festival. Midoriya wasn't thrilled. Paranoia. Picture this. You're a known vigilante, wanted by many pro heroes, who also have the advantage of knowing your fighting style. If he was going to be forced to participate in the sports festival, he reasoned getting out first thing was his best bet. Shinso walked over to Midoriya, who was mumbling beyond comprehension. He could have sworn he heard something about the sports festival, so he butted in. "What was that about the festival, Midoriya?" Midoriya jumped out of his seat. "Oh, it's just you, Shinso. Don't sneak up on me like that." He only laughed in response. "Are you gonna tell me what you were mumbling about, or?" He was cut off by himself, Shinso's quirk forcing him to tell. "I was going to purposely fail the sports festival the first chance I get because he stopped himself as best he could. He didn't want Shinso to know about that. "Ah, poor Midoriya, why are you going to fail, huh?" He kept his mouth shut as best as he could. He was still underneath Shinso's control, and Shinso could make him remove his hand, but what fun would that be? The sounds that came from Midoriya's mouth were nothing but muffled whispers. "Alright, if you want to be no fun, I guess I'll leave you alone." Shinso walked away, most likely to discuss this with Hatsum, but nonetheless Midoriya let out a quick sigh of relief. He had been this close to letting Shinso know about his work. Over a period of 3 days, Midoriya was being nothing less than bugged by Hatsum and Shinso about the sports festival. "Midoriya, I don't know what's gotten into you, but it isn't like you to just decide to fail. What happened to all that determination?" He didn't answer. In fact, he was ignoring most things. "Midoriya." Shinso pulled him out of the road, and almost as soon as he did, a large truck roared by. Midoriya looked around, then at the scared faces of his two friends. "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention." "Obviously." Hatsum yelled. "Izuku, wake up. You're going to be late." He groaned. He hadn't nearly gotten as much sleep as he needed, but he got up anyways. Midoriya got ready for school as quick as he could, went downstairs and grabbed some toast to eat on the way, and ran to school. No one greeted him at the gate today. The bell for class had probably already rung. He trudged his way to class, rubbing his eyes. When Midoriya finally got there, he ignored the inquiring stares he got as he walked to his seat. He was never late. Lunch came faster than normal. Shinso said basically nothing to him all day, but that was normal. "Midoriya, you were late this morning. I thought you were deathly ill or something." Hatsum yelled when she saw him at lunch. "No, sorry, Hatsum." He laughed. "I was up late last night and overslept." "That sucks to be you, I guess," Shinso said to him for the first time that day. Hatsum gasped. "Shinso, you aren't mute." "Yeah, just eat your food." The rest of the day went relatively uneventful. After lunch, their teacher announced that the UA Sports Festival would be occurring next week, regardless of the villain attack the hero course dealt with a couple of weeks ago. Last period was a free period, so all he heard was his classmates taking about the festival. Midoriya wasn't thrilled. Paranoia. Picture this. You're a known vigilante, wanted by many pro heroes, who also have the advantage of knowing your fighting style. If he was going to be forced to participate in the sports festival, he reasoned getting out first thing was his best bet. Shinso walked over to Midoriya, who was mumbling beyond comprehension. He could have sworn he heard something about the sports festival, so he butted in. What was that about the festival, Midoriya? Midoriya jumped out of his seat. Oh, it's just you, Shinso. Don't sneak up on me like that. He only laughed in response. Are you gonna tell me what you were mumbling about, or? He was cut off by himself, Shinso's quirk forcing him to tell. I was going to purposely fail the sports festival the first chance I get because he stopped himself as best he could. He didn't want Shinso to know about that. Ah, poor Midoriya, why are you going to fail, huh? He kept his mouth shut as best as he could. He was still underneath Shinso's control, and Shinso could make him remove his hand, but what fun would that be? The sounds that came from Midoriya's mouth were nothing but muffled whispers. Alright, if you want to be no fun, I guess I'll leave you alone. Shinso walked away, most likely to discuss this with Hatsum, but nonetheless. Midoriya let out a quick sigh of relief. He had been this close to letting Shinso know about his work. Over a period of 3 days, Midoriya was being nothing less than bugged by Hatsum and Shinso about the sports festival. Midoriya, I don't know what's gotten into you, but it isn't like you to just decide to fail. What happened to all that determination? He didn't answer. In fact, he was ignoring most things. Midoriya. Shinso pulled him out of the road, and almost as soon as he did, a large truck roared by. OF-. Midoriya looked around, then at the scared faces of his two friends. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Obviously. Hatsum yelled. The UA Sports Festival was only 2 days away, and although Izuku was in the General Studies course, he could feel the impact it had on the school's attitude as a whole. Everyone was anxious and enthusiastic at the exact same time, all except Izuku, it seemed. He couldn't stop thinking about what could go wrong. His after-school job was known throughout Japan at this point, and at worst, the festival would completely unmask him. The only problem he had, though, was he had promised his friends he would try his best, and they would be able to tell he wasn't. So, he was faced with quite a predicament. Risk getting caught, or lose his friends' trust. Izuku knew they wouldn't actually lose their trust, but still, this is worst-case scenario Izuku. He was so lost in thought again. Shinso was able to walk up in front of him during study hall, and Izuku still didn't notice. He didn't notice when Shinso tried to ask him if he was okay, nor when he poked him. He turned and walked away, knowing full well when Izuku gets like this, there's almost no way to get him out. All you can do is wait. Shinso walked out of study hall and back to the commons. Although he wasn't looking for her, he somehow found Hatsum standing in front of him. Oh hey, what's up? Izuku's out of it again, and I can't get a word out of him, even if I would have tried. You know how he gets. Yeah. It's fine, I understand. I just can't figure out why he just passed this up. Hatsum fiddled with her current project in her hands. Maybe he just has some self-esteem issues, and doesn't like being in the spotlight. I can see that happening. So you're saying you think he wants to fail early on so he doesn't have to be the center of attention? Doesn't that seem just a little unlike him? Yeah, but it's the only reason I can come up with. I'm not going to try and force it out of him again either, so don't bother asking. No fun. She pouted but quickly sprung back. Hey Shinso, do you want to see my new baby? I think I'd better go. He almost ran from Hatsum, as her rambles could go on for hours on end. Once Hatsum starts, she doesn't stop and follows you until she's done. This time, Hatsum didn't follow. She sat down in one of the chairs in the room and smiled. Oh, Izuku, what do you think you're doing? She wondered aloud. Do you really think I haven't figured it out by now? Throughout the past week, Izuku hadn't been doing much in terms of vigilante work. Instead, he was letting his head be filled with small, trivial matters. So, it was only natural he wouldn't be able to sleep the night before the sports festival. Izuku decided to go patrol, to spend the time he couldn't just waste away by lying in bed, unable to sleep. He didn't really know what had happened, or how he had gotten there either, but the next thing he knew, he was on a train to Hosu. He wasn't in his costume, he knew better. But if for some reason he was, the few heroes on the train wouldn't have cared. They were focused on much, much more important things. As soon as the train ground to a halt, he ran into Hosu Station's bathroom and changed as fast as he could. Izuku took off down the roads, tangling in between burning buildings. He had never seen destruction on such a large scale. It would be devastating to everyone living there, with no building he could see left without at least a scorch mark. Although he would have liked to help, he was useless with fire, and besides, the pros had it covered. He'd leave it to them just this once. So, doing what some of the pros should have been doing, Izuku ran down the back streets, looking for people to help evacuate. It was obvious the fire wasn't the only thing going on, and the civilians don't need to get involved. So far, he's been lucky, finding only one person and helping him get to the train station. That's all he can really do at least, but it's better than doing nothing. Izuku was able to slow his pace significantly, fatigue catching up to him. He would have called it a night then and there, except for the screams he heard not long after. Oh shit, OF dash, he thinks, pulling energy out of seemingly nowhere and sprinting to the origin of the screams. Quickly, he finds an alleyway on the outskirts of the city, which he suspects is where the screams came from. And just as quickly he regrets coming here. Oh, isn't it that troublesome little bunny? What are you doing here? He didn't respond, instead taking in the scene before him. Two pro-heroes lay on the ground, both bleeding extremely heavily, and he wasn't sure if they would survive even if he could get them out. Izuku was unsure of what to do at all. He turned and stared at the man, trying to make out what he looked like. There was no good source of light, but Izuku could tell, at the least, he was intimidating. It didn't help that he knew exactly who he was talking to. Hello, Stain. Izuku held his breath, honestly scared for his life. His voice shook with every word. What a surprise. One of the heroes groans, surprising him. He'd thought they'd both be unconscious at this point, but apparently not. He gets on the ground next to him, recognizing him immediately as the hero, Ingenium. Blood covered his armor, seeping out of cracks he didn't know existed. He was obviously in a horrible state, to a point you'd be wishing for death. Izuku says nothing, unsure of what he'd even do. But the hero surprises him. You need to be careful, his voice shakes more than Izuku's was earlier. He coughs up blood, before attempting to finish what he'd been saying. His quirk can immobilize you. Leave you as good as dead. Thank you, Izuku replies, sincerity dripping in his voice. I'll do all I can to help. Midoriya turns back to Stain, who had just been standing there, watching. Are you two done now? He pulls out his sword, not waiting for an answer. Great. He seems to give Izuku a few seconds to prepare, but after that, he runs towards him at full speed and is able to slam him into a wall. Caught off guard by Stain's sudden speed, any sort of counter he could have taken was forgotten. Stain pulls his sword up to his neck, his glare freezing Izuku in place. Such a strange little bunny. Midoriya panics, stuck between a sword and the wall. There is nowhere to run. You're obviously not a villain. He looks over him again. Heroes refuse to see the good you do. You help others, and you do so without gaining a thing. Stain starts to lower his sword. Black Rabbit, you're worthy to be a hero. He froze as he realized Stain, although he had indeed spared him, he didn't leave without using his quirk on him. Blood was flowing down his neck, but he was more upset that he could only stand and watch as Stain fled. Ingenium was able to push himself up soon after Stain fled. Izuku was just starting to get control of his body again, but the other hero was still out cold. Thank you, Ingenium says, surprising Izuku for the second time that day. Why, you're welcome, he replies, although he's confused about what he was being thanked for at all. Then he had a revelation. He could barely move. Oh no, shit no. What happened? I'm not going to get out of here before the police arrest me, am I? The fear laced in his voice. He looked at his savior, then realization plastered all over his face. You're Black Rabbit. Oh shit, they'll arrest you on the spot. Obviously, and you probably would too, if you were in better shape. Don't say you wouldn't. There's a huge bounty for me, I know. Anyone with half a brain would realize that money would change their life. He stared at Midoriya, pity in his eyes. Oh, I can move. Midoriya started to move his hands, then his legs, then he stood up. Well then, I assume some heroes should be here soon, so I'll be off. He looks back at the two heroes. I hope the best for you too. Thank you. He smiles for the first time that night. With that, he was off, leaving no sign of being there, save for a few blood splatters on the ground. He'd have to wash his costume when he got home, it was covered in blood, and after all that, he'd have to sew up his costume as well. On the other hand, Tensei and his sidekick were found in that alleyway with extensive injuries not long after Izuku left. They both went into intensive care, where Tensei was informed he would be paralyzed from the waist down. He could no longer be a pro-hero. But even after all that, he couldn't shake the feeling something was off. He sent in a report of the events that went down that night, including the fight between Black Rabbit and Stain, if you could call it that. Little did anyone know, this one report would completely change the future's course of events. The day started just as any other would. The only true difference was Izuku, who felt anxious beyond belief. There was no reason for his anxieties, at least, not yet. He got up, having only slept around 2 hours that night. He was tempted to go back to sleep, to not go to school, just this once. Izuku, get up. It's time for school. But, of course, his mother wouldn't let him. Not on such an important day. I'm up, Mom. Don't worry. I'll be out in a few. He shouts, hoping his mother hears so she doesn't decide to personally come in to wake him. He still had to clean that gash on his neck he got last night. When he got home, he wrapped it in bandages and slept, deciding to deal with it in the morning, but that was a mistake. It had already bled through both layers he had on, and it was starting to spread onto his shirt as well. He quickly took off the bloodied bandages and threw them into the box with his bloodied costume. He wasn't going to let his mother see them, it would worry the sheet out of her. He looked at his clock. 6:50 a.m., he could take a shower, clean his wounds, and not have his mother question it at all. So, he grabbed his uniform and a couple of undershirts, just in case, and ran into the bathroom. Luckily, his mother didn't see him, so he was able to get in and get out without his mother worrying too much. With his bandages off, he was able to tell it wasn't a deep cut by far, but it could have been much, much worse. It wasn't bleeding as much as it was when he had run into Stain, but it was probably better to try and treat it now before he passed out from blood loss. It was around this point when Inko started worrying about her son. She had all the reason to, anyways. It wasn't like him to be hiding anything, especially not even the smallest scratches. But here she was, cleaning blood off the floor, leaving a trail through Izuku's room to the bathroom. The amount of blood was really the thing worrying her most. But what would she say to him when he got out of the shower? Hi, I saw your trail of blood and I'm wondering if everything's alright? She pondered actually saying that to him, but decided against it, opting for a more indirect question instead. Time skipped to after shower brought to you by not knowing how to continue. Izuku, I need to ask you something. Yeah? What is it, Mom? Are you alright? That froze Izuku in his tracks. She knew, of course she knew. He'd been careless and let himself make a mess running down the hallway, why wouldn't she know? Ma, I'll be fine, don't worry about me, he flashed his mother a sad smile. He hated lying to his mother, but at this point, it's all he seems to do. I'll survive. Aizu, even I can tell you're not telling me something. I'm not as thick as you think I am. I know. You're not, I don't think you are, I just dash. You don't have to explain, I get it. Just tell me where you're hurt. I'll take care of it, no questions. He reluctantly agreed to let his mother see, and unwrapped his neck. The wound had mostly clotted by now, but still, at this rate Izuku could bleed out if he wasn't careful. I know I said no questions, but Izuku did dash, she hated to even think about that possibility. Did you do this? To yourself? No. It isn't like that. I swear. It's not, I didn't do it myself. She hoped he was telling the truth. Izuku was really lucky, it wasn't horrible. It'd been any deeper, and it could have been fatal. She cleaned the wound the best she could, then bandaged it much tighter than Izuku had. Mata, thanks. I don't know what I would have done without you. Just tell me when you get injured like that. You don't know how worried I was. I'm sorry. I really am. He began tearing up, something he tried to avoid doing. Inko pulled him into a hug, comforting him to the best of her abilities. "It's going to be all right, Izuku. Everything is going to be just fine." "It isn't though. It won't ever be," he whispered, hoping Inko wouldn't hear. "I know," she replies. "I know." Midoriya was somehow able to get to school only 3 minutes late. His teacher, when he walked in, looked at him strangely. He wasn't the type to be late for class, even by a few minutes, and especially not on a day with a big even like today. But that isn't his to question. He marked him tardy, then began talking about the rules for the festival. "I want all of you to at least try. It doesn't matter if you don't get past the first round, have fun out there." Izuku stayed silenced even through the chorus of Plus Ultra that rang through the halls of the school. He had plenty of time last night to think, and he decided to try his best. For Shinso and Hatsum, of course. His 2 friends and his mother were the only real reason he was still at UA and not, say, some random jail cell. "All right everyone, go get your gym uniforms on, then meet up outside the stadium." The teacher yelled over the students, who were all running downstairs already. Izuku, on the other hand, didn't see a reason to hurry, especially when he saw Shinso hanging back to talk to him. He smiled and jogged over. "Hey Shinso." "Hey Midoriya." Shinso's gaze wandered to Izuku's bandaged neck. "You alright?" "Oh, yeah, don't worry. I'm fine. It's just a few scratches." "On your neck?" "Yes." Shinso, understandably, was confused as all hell. "What happened?" It was an accident." Izuku paused, unsure of what to say next. "And? Well, there may or may not have been a blade involved. Not the truth, not a lie. But it was still more than he'd originally wanted to share." "Oh shit. Are you okay?" Concern was plastered on his face, exactly why Izuku didn't want to tell anyone. "I told you I'm fine." "No, actually." The 2 were starting to near the gym's overcrowded locker rooms. "I said I'm fine. Completely fine. I'm not going to die from just a scratch." Silence between the 2 fell as they went inside, and continued as they went on their way to the stadium. On the way, Hatsum had seemed to be looking for them. "Izuku, Shinso, there you are." "Hey Hatsum." "Hey, Hatsum, look who's gotten himself injured yet again," Shinso says as he rolls his eyes, all concern from minutes ago hidden. "Oh, Izuku, what happened this time?" Her face showed the same pity and concern Shinso's did. "Nothing really. It was an accident. I'm fine now." "Really?" "Take it easy, though, when we're competing. We wouldn't want our precious Izuku to get more hurt, would we?" she teased. "I'm not sure how to respond to that, so I'm just not going to." A few chuckles came from the others, but stopped almost as soon as they had started. Their gazes focused on the road ahead of them. They had arrived at the stadium. The roar people above them was loud, almost as loud a jet engine. It was deafening. People had to yell to talk to others, and though many tried, they just couldn't seem to talk over the masses of people. Eventually, they had Present Mike come into the room, being the only teacher that was guaranteed to be heard by all the students. Chances are, the crowd above would also be able to hear him, even from down there. "Hey listeners, get ready. The first year's first event will be starting in 15 minutes. Be out on the field sometime before then. The other 2 years go wait on the bleachers." He shouts, then leaves. Uneventful, unlike usual. After he's gone, it leaves almost 1,000 children alone with many unanswered questions. The chatter would only get louder. Midoriya, Shinso, and Hatsum stayed towards the back of the room. It was much too loud to hold a conversation, so they sat in silence. Izuku and Shinso both had decided to try to listen to music, while Hatsum just sat there, probably thinking about her new inventions, and thinking of how they could be improved. The rest of the students seemed to start to stream out of the crowded room, which was probably a good idea. Midoriya stands, motioning for the 2 others to follow. When everyone had finally made their way out into the stadium, Midnight called up the player representative, Katsuki Bakugo, to the stage. "I just want to say, I'll win." And with that one line, the rest for the first years erupted into disapproval. For the first time, Shinso was the first one to speak. "He's pretty cocky, huh?" "Oh yeah, he's always been like that," Izuku says, not making eye contact with anyone but the ground. So, you know him? Shinso asks, intrigued. Yeah, we used to be friends when we were little. Really little. Before he got his quirk and I didn't little. After that he wasn't really my friend anymore, but I tried to deny it, but it never got any better. Oh, do you want to talk about it? Shinso's worried expression studies Izuku. No, not really. I've tried to accept it, but talking about it more just kinda stings. Yeah. Yeah, I understand, he says, but his expression doesn't change. Hatsum runs into the two out of nowhere, interrupting the tense atmosphere. Where were you two? I swear, every time I take my eyes off of you, you go missing. She says. We've been standing here the whole time. You're the only one who moved, May. Yeah, well still. It doesn't matter. Just try to stick with me, okay? As much as we love you, that's not happening. Hatsum pouts, defeated. Fine. The general chatter quiets, then Midnight cracks her whip to get everyone's attention. Listen up. The first event will be. She waits for the electronic board behind her to stop shuffling. The obstacle race. Alright. Each one of you will race 4 kilometers outside of the stadium in an obstacle course. You are all allowed usage of your quirks as long as you do not leave the course. Good luck. Everyone lined up at a small corridor that led outside of the stadium. It was much too small for all of the students to go through at once, so it would be very cramped during the first few minutes of the race. So, do you two have a plan? Hatsum asked. Well, I do, but I can't really say it'll work, Shinso replies, deadpanning every word. I don't have a plan. But I'm sure it'll work out. Midoriya says, beaming a smile at his friends. Ah, cute. Of course it will. Why don't you come with me for a while? The support gear I have will surely help us both. She offered. Oh, okay, but are you sure? I don't want to weigh you down, I'd just be dead weight. Of course. You're my friend, I'd do anything for you. Besides, I know you aren't dead weight. You'll do better than you think. Thanks, May, I owe you. He smiles again, earning a smile from Hatsum in return. No, you don't. It's fine. But when we're going to take off, make sure to hold on to me, okay? The awkward stare from Midoriya made her restate her statement. When I start using my support gear, grab something, my waist, my leg, my arm, something. That way, if we happen to be flung or go faster than intended, you won't get as injured. Oh, okay. He was going to continue, but a horn blew, signaling the beginning of the race. Most people started immediately, pushing through the crowded tunnel, but some others stayed behind, risking losing altogether. Midoriya and Hatsum did the latter, rather waiting and be left behind than squished. Shinso, however, did the former, making good use of his quirk. While Midoriya and Hatsum were talking, Shinso found a few unsuspecting students to talk to, and used them to get across, much like a boat in a sea of people. And they were off, set to encounter their first obstacle any moment now. Robots. There's robots, giant Ifenji robots. Hatsum. Turn around. Oh, come on, Midoriya. Don't tell me you're scared of some hunks of metal? Yes, metal hunks that are 1,000 feet tall. And it really doesn't help that we're gaining speed. Yeah, but where's your sense of adventure? At home, where I'm thinking I should have stayed. Hatsum frowned at her friend. I didn't take you for a coward, Midoriya. I'm not a coward. I just don't want to be crushed. I mean, that's understandable, but we're doing the sports festival. We can't quit now. The two were quickly accelerating, thanks to one of Hatsum's mobility inventions. But because the two started so late, they were far from catching up. Shinso was nowhere to be seen, probably somewhere ahead. Remnants of ice shards were everywhere, and the robots that were in the horizon were starting to come crashing down. Figures were pretty late to the party. They're having all the fun, whined Hatsum. I'm not complaining, at least there's less to worry about, Midoriya replies. Speaking of things to worry about, do you think that ice wall that just popped into existence will be a challenge to get over? What? And just as she said, there was an ice wall growing ahead of them. It had frozen 2 of the robots, which was probably the intention. Slowing down everyone behind it seemed to just be a bonus. Oh, that, Midoriya said, strangely calm. Then Hatsum saw his expression. Pure excitement, like a child at a theme park. You're having fun, aren't you? She said, smirking. I guess so. Admit it. It's thrilling. Midoriya smiled, knowing Hatsum could read him like a book. Fine, but just a little bit, he admitted sheepishly. Doesn't it just make you envy those heroes who get to do this all the time? Hatsum asked. Midoriya didn't answer, instead opting for silence. Looking out on the field speeding past, many students were trapped in ice. The robots were frozen onto the ground, and the ice wall was all but melting. There was, however, a small gap beside the wall where the two could squeeze through. Hatsum, over there. Midoriya pointed towards the gap, on the complete other side of the field. Yeah, I see it, she responded, changing direction to head towards it. As they flew through, Midoriya guessed that there were still around 100 students struggling to pass the first obstacle, letting Hatsum and Midoriya climb into the top 100 easily. Flat land surrounded them on all sides, except where the ice wall stood, of course. A good chunk of the remaining students were running through here, but thanks to Hatsum's inventions, Midoriya and Hatsum were able to fly past them, easily landing them in the top 50. That was until they came across the gorge. Roughly 100 feet across, with narrow rock stools placed every so often, which towered over the bottom. Thin cables connected the rocks, which could help with mobility, but slow you down significantly. The two come to a complete stop, as Hatsum had to change some of her support gear. Quickly, she pulled out a grappling hook and messed with her hover boots. Midoriya, come on! She pulled him back onto her back and jumped off the side of the gorge. Midoriya, quite understandably, screamed. Falling off a cliff against your will do that to you. Hatsum let him panic for a few seconds, just to be an a-hole, then shot her grappling hook into the side of a rock and started swinging from rock to rock, Midoriya holding on for dear life. Sure, he was a vigilante, but that doesn't mean he was faking his reaction at all. Midoriya was terrified of actually falling, especially because without Hatsum, he would be powerless. He wouldn't have even come if it weren't for Hatsum and Shinso. But as he prepared for his last moments, Hatsum pulled a move and resumed control of their entire fall. Hatsum, on the other hand, knew she had Midoriya in the palm of her hand. The biggest difference between her and Shinso, although the two have really always known Midoriya would do anything for them, she could blackmail him, if necessary. But that would only be if worse came to worst. In all honesty, she'd hate to do anything to lose Midoriya's friendship. The two had been almost inseparable since they'd met, and Midoriya had been one of her only friends to ever express an interest in her inventions. All of this played through her head, along with having to focus on not dying. That was very important. Eventually, the two did get across. Hatsum, although she did pull some mean tricks, did get the two across unscathed. It was faster than most of the other participants, so Midoriya decided that he'd take some of the extra time to sit and calm himself. Midoriya, what are you doing? We should get going. Sitting, what does it look like? Why though? We're so close. Oh, I don't know, maybe because I thought you let me think we'd be dead, 3 times? Oh, don't be such a party pooper. It was all in good fun. I thought I'd go splat, definitely not fun for me. Midoriya gestures to the gorge. He'd probably need to see a therapist to go near any type of canyon again. Hatsum frowns, then forcefully picks up Midoriya. She's stronger than she looks, and it only takes her 30 seconds to get him up and the two back on the road towards victory. The only thing between Hatsum and Midoriya and the finish line was one tiny dirt patch. It was thin, at most 50 feet across, but at least 300 feet long. It didn't take much looking around to figure out what was going on. It was a literal minefield. Pink dust floated all around the place, and against Midoriya's judgment, Hatsum decided it would be safer and faster if they went in on foot. I really think dash. Trust me, Midoriya. It'll be faster. Midoriya sighed. Fine, but while we're walking, I would like to know why we can't just fly over it. All right. So? Midoriya asked, trying to scout the minefield. Well, they are just hover boots. They hover. They can't do that by themselves, so they shoot out jets of air at the ground. It's hard to explain, but if we went over here with those, we'd explode. Oh. The look on his face was priceless. It was one of wordless terror mixed with intrigue. He couldn't replicate it if he tried. So the two navigated the minefield in silence. Midoriya mostly followed Hatsume's lead, since she decided she would be the one leading. He didn't mind, mostly hoping that she'd be able to spot the mines easier with her quirk, even though it doesn't work like that anyways. Pink explosions went off left and right of them, but the two hadn't had any trouble with the mines yet. There wasn't much talking between the two during the entire thing, as Hatsume was busy routing her path and holding on to her inventions to prevent them from falling, and Midoriya really isn't one to start conversations. So the two continued in silence, Midoriya following Hatsume, but also analyzing the other students navigating the minefield. Hatsume, look at Shinso. He was trying not to laugh. When Hatsume did look up, she saw Shinso, riding on the shoulders of some students, while they took all the hits from mines and the like. He was just sitting there, relaxing. She chuckled. Classic. Hope they get that on camera. Shinso looks like a living meme, she said. But seriously, we should move faster if we want to finish and get to the second round. Yeah, probably, he agreed. They were already more than halfway through, and the two were only gaining speed. Hatsume used her quirk to see the mines further away to be able to move faster. Midoriya just ran after her haphazardly, but luckily he didn't seem to step on any mines. Here's the first students. It's a tie for first place. The announcer, present Mike Thiels. Hatsume, do you think we can go any faster? Probably, but we could step on a mine or something. Well, Midoriya sprints past Hatsume, with Hatsume right behind him. Midoriya, slow down. You're going to dash. She was cut off by Midoriya, stepping on a mine. He flew forwards, propelled by the mine's explosion, while Hatsume fell backwards. That's exactly what I was going to say, damn it. She got up and ran over to Midoriya. Are you okay? I'm fine, just need to get back up and moving is all. Hatsume helps him up, but he hisses. I reopened the Finji wound. That's so effing great. Midoriya, calm down. Hatsume looked at Midoriya, concerned. Getting all frustrated isn't going to help at all. Just calm yourself, and we'll be able to finish and get your wound bandaged and whatnot. Blood was seeping through his bandages, which led to some of the passing students giving him some concerned looks. No one stopped the. Midoriya didn't seem to care about the others, instead focusing on not moving his neck. I guess, we'll just have to finish faster now, huh? He said, smirking at Hatsume. Yeah, I guess so. Hatsume wasn't going to tell him this, but she found it almost scary that he could do a whole 180 like that. It was unnerving to see him going from shaking and scared to the almost Bakuga-like personality she'd seen in less than 10 minutes. He turns back to her. Are you coming or? Oh yeah. Sorry. The two start running again, after losing almost 2 minutes of precious time. Here comes the 20th student, only 22 more spots to pass into the second round. Present Mike screams. Come on. We don't have much time. I can tell. The two were almost there, less than 10 feet of minefield between them and the final stretch. It wasn't long until the two were done with it all and started running faster than they had been previously. They were able to pass most of the students easily, not having run most of the race, therefore having much more energy. That's 30. 12 more spots. Come on, Hatsume. Faster. I'm trying. Not everyone can run as fast as you. With only 50 feet between the two and the finish line, Midoriya booked it, Hatsume starting to trail behind. It didn't take more than 10 seconds to get there, Hatsume right behind him. We're done, he yelled. Finally. And we got into the second round. Yeah. I'm gonna go see if Shinso's around here. All right, she said, then remembered. Wait no. You have to get that, and he's gone. Great. When Midoriya found Shinso, he was apologizing to the students he'd been riding. Shinso. There you are. Oh, hey Midoriya. He turned to the students again. Yeah, but I'm sorry about that. He then turned back to Midoriya. So where's Hatsu Dash? He saw Midoriya's bandages were soaked with blood. Midoriya, isn't that the entire reason you were riding with Hatsume? What? Yes, but I'm fine. I swear. Midoriya, you really need that healed. I heard Recovery Girl was healing people somewhere around here. I'll help you find her. I said I'm fine, Shinso. No, you're not. You're going to get that fixed, or I swear I'll make you. You wouldn't. I would. Now, come on. Let's get you fixed up. As it turns out, Recovery Girl wasn't far at all, and she was actually stationed next to the gate where the finish line was. Midoriya didn't have to explain or anything to her, and the next thing he knew, all that was left was a scar. He quickly thanked her, then ran off to find Hatsum and Shinso, happily chatting. He smiled, then ran up to his friends. Can I have your attention? Midnight stood in front of the 40-some students who were able to finish first. A few of them stopped talking, but the majority ignored her. She didn't really seem to care, however, and she continued. The next event will be. She paused for dramatic effect. The cavalry battle. No more than 4 to a team. Good luck to all. Midoriya, Shinso want to team up? Hatsum asked. Sure. Shinso replies unenthusiastically. I'd love to, Hatsum. What about the 4th teammate? Do you think that having one would be a good idea? I suppose, but who? Doesn't everyone else already have a group? Besides, Midnight didn't say we had to be in groups of 4, just that 4 was the maximum. Well, it doesn't really matter, does it? Let's just see who doesn't have a team yet. And there was exactly one student who didn't have a team. It was probably because out of all the students, he scored lowest and no one wanted him. When they asked him if he wanted to join them, he was ecstatic. It would benefit you all greatly to have moi on your team. It's settled then. Aoyama, welcome on board. Time skip BC. I'm not writing this part for the 47th time. The 4 ended up grabbing 4th place, good enough to get them into the next round. Midoriya was finally giving it his all, and it was obvious he was enjoying the festival. Hatsune couldn't wait to show off her machines, and even gave another student from the hero course some to show off. Shinso had a headache. That much was obvious. Everything else was pretty much hidden. Midoriya thinks that he'd have been a pretty good vigilante. Aoyama was over the moon that he was in the last round. He never even thought he'd get into the 2nd round, forget the 3rd. Midnight was at the head of the stadium, telling everyone what the next event was. All Midoriya heard, though, were the words, solo, one-on-one, and battle. OF-. He mumbled. What's wrong, dude? Hatsune asked. Nothing, everything's fine. You sure? Yeah. Don't worry about it. You say that a lot, Midoriya. She rolled her eyes. The first 8 battles were announced, and Midoriya only sighed. It was just his luck. His first battle was with Shinso. Shinso didn't look too happy about it, either. Let's do our best, Shinso. Yeah, he smiled. Let's do that. First round. Izuku versus Shinso. Hatsune versus Aoyama. Shoto versus Ida. Denki versus Momo. Tetsu versus Kirishima. Mina versus Siro. Tokoyami versus Uraraka. Ibara yes Bakugo. The announcer's words rung through the arena. Let's do our best, Shinso. Yeah, he smiled. Let's do that. First up, Midoriya and Shinso. The two walked up onto the battle stage, courtesy of Cementos. Battle start. Shinso smiled. Hey Midoriya. A second passes, no response. He sighs. You stupid little beach. You're just some quirkless no one. You weren't ever my friend. Midoriya tries to keep his composure. Don't speak, he wouldn't ever mean those things. He's just trying to win. He keeps telling himself. Come on, Midoriya. What are you waiting for? Someone to carry you to the next round like the last two. I'm not going to respond, he thinks. He'd never mean that. But if he's going to try to win, I might as well. Midoriya ran at him and jumped at Shinso. Shinso flashed a small smile. After all, this was far from being the first time they had sparred, and he knew what was coming. He swerved to the side as Midoriya landed where he'd been only seconds earlier. Midoriya pulled a fast one and roundhouse kicked him, pushing Shinso to the ground. Midoriya, you've gotten stronger since the last time we fought. You really need to tell me what kind of training you do alone. It really works. He stood up. All right, let's do this for real this time. Midoriya nodded. He figured he'd attack first, throwing a punch, blocked, a kick, dodged, then another kick, but it connected. Shinso fell again. It was doubtful that he enjoyed getting kicked onto that concrete, but alas. He got up as quickly as possible, so Midoriya couldn't hit him while he's down. He attacked next, seeming as his quirk wasn't working against his usually chattery friend. Midoriya, you're holding back, right? It took him off guard that it didn't seem like a question asked purely for a response, no. It radiated sincerity and almost disappointment. Midoriya opened his mouth, but shut it again just as quickly. While Midoriya was distracted with that question, Shinso took the opportunity to get close and body slam Midoriya onto the ground, pinning him there. He smirked. Shinso, sorry in advance. He grabbed Shinso's arm and flipped him as best he could, seeing as he was still on the ground. Stop. Shinso Hitoshi is out of bounds. Midoriya Izuku wins. Present Mike screamed over the mic. And indeed, Shinso's foot was just barely out of bounds from his throw. Midoriya got up and ran over to his friend. I am so sorry. Are you alright? We need to talk, Midoriya. He paused. Not here. Follow me. Okay? And with that, the two walked down the stage. The two went into one of the many deserted rooms and locked the door. Shinso? What's this about? Well, what? Midoriya, tell me exactly what the hell you're doing in your free time. You're not just sitting around. It wasn't a command. He wasn't using his quirk, like he probably should've. Shinso. Look dude, it's obvious. I talked to Hatsum earlier, but she didn't want to tell me anything. What are you two doing? We aren't doing anything. Sure you aren't. Well then, Midoriya, I'd just love to know how the F you're so much stronger all of a sudden. I get we haven't sparred since school started, but this is just crazy. There is no way in hell you should be that strong. If you aren't gonna tell me, fine. I'll get it from Hatsum. Shinso. Why are you acting like this? It's unlike you. Like what? Like an overprotective parent or something. I told you we weren't doing anything together. And then it hit him like a load of bricks. Shinso, don't tell me you're jealous that I spend more time with her than you. What? Of course not. I'm just going to get to the bottom of this, I swear. I'll figure this out. And Shinso ran out the door, leaving Midoriya once again. He's finding himself alone more and more often. Hatsum. Shinso gasped for breath. He'd run up 3 flights of stairs to find her. Oh dude, you did great in your battle. If it was anyone else, I'm sure you would have won. Thanks, but I need to ask you some questions. Oh okay. Speaking of, where's Midoriya? Downstairs. Alrighty. What did you want to talk about? Can we talk somewhere private? Preferably somewhere close though. I'm sure there's somewhere close by. There wasn't. They walked for almost 10 minutes, and luckily Hatsum's battle hadn't been called yet. When they did find a room, Shinso closed and locked the door. Hatsum, do you know how Midoriya got that strong? What? We last fought 2 months ago, but now he's just so much stronger? He probably worked out. No. I've been doing that. I'm weak compared to him. I thought you put up a good fight. He was obviously holding back. Shinso, please, do you really think he's hiding something? Yes. And I know you know what it is. Really? It's fine. Do you know what he's hiding? Any sort of clue at all? Well yes, but it's N-. Hatsum, please just tell me what you're hiding from me. Your quirk doesn't work that way, dummy. But because we're friends, I'll give you a hint. I expect you not to spill any of this. Alright, fine. Okay, well what does Midoriya have to do with rabbits? Does he just play with them? Damn Hatsum and her stupid vague hints. Midoriya? Hatsum wandered down the halls, finding no one. Her match was going to be Hatsume. Please report to the stage. She'd missed the call already. Of course she did. Oh if Alright. She ran downstairs, never knowing Midoriya was only a few doors away. He heard their conversation. They weren't as far from Midoriya as Shinso thought they were. It chilled him to his core. Hatsum knew? Since when? When did he let it slip? Hatsum, how long have you known? The battle between Hatsum and Aoyama was short. She showed off her gadgets, let Aoyama use a few, then forfeited. She wanted to have some exposure? But that was it. She didn't care about winning. Ema was happy. He didn't really think it was fair, but he'd take it. He'd go on to the next round, and that was all he wanted. He already exceeded his expectations, after all. Hatsum and Midoriya didn't see each other for the next week, Midoriya doing his best to avoid her, and she had no idea why. Shinso, as a result, was also sort of avoided, but at least he was talked to. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The next set of battles will be Mina vs Tokoyami, Bakugo vs Kirishima, Todoroki vs Momo, and Midoriya vs Aoyama. Good luck everyone. Mina Ishido and Fumikage Tokoyami please report to the arena. Their battle was short and one-sided, as was Midoriya's. Bakugo just slightly won against Kirishima, and Todoroki just pushed Momo out of bounds with his ice. It was as entertaining to watch as it sounds. Although I can't seem to word correctly, so you are gonna have to deal with this. Hey, Rima, you did great against Aizu. Did I? I mean, of course I did. Thank you for noticing, Hatsum. Yeah. Did you see where Aizu went, though? I need to talk to him. No, sorry, mademoiselle. After the battle, he just walked away. I see. Thanks anyways. Ha, of course. Or Han IG, but that's kinda rude. And we're in the semi-finals. The last few rounds await. Next up is Tokoyami vs Bakugo and Midoriya vs Todoroki. How exciting! A quirkless student made it this far. But how much longer can he hold out? Let us see. Geez, whoever's announcing is really annoying, Midoriya mutters to himself. Especially just commentating on me? Why? And now, the finale you've all been waiting for. Todoroki vs Bakugo. The rest was muffled to Midoriya. He didn't care, he'd lost already. It didn't apply to him. He'd just run back to his little hiding place on the bottom. Midoriya. There you are. Hatsune's voice echoed through the empty hallway. Oh God, no, I am not being confronted about this now. So he ran. That was all he could do. He ran up the stairs, going as fast as possible. Hatsum couldn't keep up. And that was the last she saw of him, for the next 2 weeks at least. Once he'd found himself locked in the top floor's bathroom, he let himself calm down. But it didn't really work. He kept thinking back to his battles. Did he let himself show off too much? Why'd he even agree to do this in the first place? They'd know it was him, Hatsum already did, and she didn't even have half of what the police probably did. Or maybe he was just overthinking it all. Maybe no one actually knew, and Hatsum was just telling him about the gloves he'd asked her to fix 2 or so weeks ago. He really hoped it was the latter. Izuka Midoriya and Tokoyami Fumikage tie for 3rd place, with Shoto Todoroki not far ahead, scoring 2nd. But today, our winner here is Katsuki Bakugo. Midoriya didn't go accept his medal. He was too busy having his whole world crumble. He'd thought his 2 words were separate and would stay that way forever, but apparently not. He didn't need so many people staring at him at a time like this, especially not Bakugo. He'd stopped calling him Kaken after the whole All Might incident. Speaking of, he did know of All Might's secret. It was always awkward when he saw him in the halls. He didn't even think about it, but perhaps he'd be able to use it to get himself out of some sticky situation later. This is not the time for battle strategy, Midoriya. He ended up getting his medal from his homeroom teacher after claiming he was puking when they were presenting them. Shinso was pretty critical of Midoriya in the following days, no weeks. There was literally nothing he knew of that it would connect Midoriya and rabbits. Damn you, Hatsum. Hatsum, on the other hand, didn't even hear from him until the week after. And even then, it was just a text message. Midoriya, hey, Hatsum, I'm sorry ABT avoiding you. Hatsum, don't worry about it. What's going on though? Midoriya, I'll tell you later, how ABT that? Hatsum, okay sure. See you at school then? And then there was no response. 2-week time skip brought to you by JBA. Nothing would have happened if he'd just been more careful. He hadn't even gone out once since the festival, but of course. He can't fix his past careless mistakes, now can he? And this was all just because of one knock on the door. Izuku Midoriya, correct? Midoriya hadn't been expecting anyone today, much less a police officer. He almost slammed the door, purely out of instinct, but managed to stop himself. Yes, that's me. Would you like to come in? He asked the officer, voice dripping with his blatant nervousness. My mother just made tea. That would be great, thank you, he replies, and Midoriya leads him back to the kitchen. Izuku, who was a dash, she stops when she sees the police officer. Oh, may I help you? Yes, I'm here to discuss your son, Ms. Midoriya. Inko was taken aback. My son? Izuku? Yes, now if you'll let me, I'd like to explain the situation. He looked at Inko and gave her a reassuring smile. I am Detective Tsukachi, and I've been working on a case with Hosu police for over a month now. We found samples of what we've found to be Izuku's blood at the scene, and we'd like to question him. Both Inko and Izuku were practically frozen, but for drastically different reasons. Inko was thinking back to when Izuku had that gash on his neck he couldn't explain, and wondering if somehow he'd been injured that same night. On the other hand, Izuku was panicking. He thought, for certain, they'd found him out. Don't worry, we aren't going to do anything irrational. I could even do it now if you'd like. Inko nodded. Yes, please do. All right, he turned back to Izuku. Izuku, may I ask if you were in Hosu on April 23rd? Izuku nodded, afraid to speak. Inko just sat in horror, fearing her worries were true. Can I ask what you were doing in Hosu? He took a deep breath and answered. I heard about everything happening there, and wanted to see the heroes in action. I just happened to get jumped in an alley. The detective's quirk, human lie detector, went off. He didn't say anything to Izuku about it, though, opting to continue questioning him. He had his suspicions and he wasn't going to bring it up near his mother. Did you happen to run into Stain? The hero killer? No. Another lie. Okay, thank you for your time. Izuku, I was wondering if I could ask you a few more questions later. I'm sorry to have interrupted your dinner. Sure, he says. Izuku shakes the detective's hand and begins to lead him back to the door. Once Inko was certain not to hear, the detective says, I know you were lying. Izuku, thoroughly panicked and shocked, doesn't respond. I have my suspicions, but I can't act on them until I know the truth. It's not anything horrible, don't worry. Tsukachi would really regret saying this if he did, in fact, get this wrong. Just getting you a hero license. What? If he was shocked before, it did not even compare to now. I know, but if you want to keep this up, you had better be able to do this legally. If you want, I won't even tell the pros your identity. You'll be able to continue, but this time, with the law on your side. Oh, hey, hold on. What are you saying? I don't dash. We're not idiots, unlike some like to think. We put 2 and 2 together, the blood samples, the reports, your fighting style both in and out of UA. So, you're saying you've known for how long? How many people know? So, he doesn't deny it. That's a relief. I thought I'd made a mistake for a second there. It's been a little less than a month, and just the 5 of us in the detective department. We'll keep your secret safe, promise? And why should I trust you? Really, you have no choice, but I would like to gain your trust voluntarily. It makes things much, much easier. Midoriya released a pent-up breath and looked back at his mother. Fine, but on one condition. Yes. In addition to the conditions you've already set in place, I would like my mother to know nothing of this. If she finds out, I want to tell her myself. You've got yourself a deal there, Mr. Midoriya. Whenever you finish eating, come down to the station and ask for me, I'll be there. Then we can finish this conversation. Midoriya nodded, then shut the door in his face. And only then did he process what he just said. Oh shit, I knew I should have just stayed home that night, but no. I had to play hero. Now the police know who I am. Aizu? Are you okay over there? She walks towards the door to find Izuku, sitting in front of the door. I thought I heard yelling. Yeah, Mom, I'm fine. He manages to choke out before trying to get up. If something's going on, you know I'm always here to help you. No matter what. You know that just tell me what I can do. Thanks, Mom, but I don't think there's much you can do. His smile, although genuine, is a sad one. The damage is done. Aizu. I'm going to my room. He looked at his mother once more, then ran up to her and wrapped her in a hug. Mom, thank you. Inko was startled by the sudden hug at first, but quickly hugged her son back. I know how much I worry you, and I'm sure you're more worried than ever now. But he couldn't get the words out of his mouth. Izuku was full on crying now, and Inko just held him tighter. He'd gone so long, trying to be strong for others, he deserved this. Izuku, you're my son. Of course I worry about you. Everyone does. I know you have things you can't tell me, and I understand. Just because of that doesn't change who you are. You're my sweet, wonderful son, and no matter what happens, I'll love you just the same. Stop, he laughed through his tears. You're going to embarrass me with all the sentimental talk. This time, it was Inko's turn to laugh. This sentimental moment somehow had turned into more than just that, but a bonding moment. Inko really enjoyed it. Not seeing her son every day made her miss it. Izuku just stayed in his mother's arms for a while. It was really comforting. But, of course, he had to remember he said he'd go to the station. Oh, Mom, actually, he stops just for a second so he can figure out how to form a sentence. I forgot I agreed to go see the detective after dinner, so I guess I'll go do that. Are you sure you don't want to eat first? Her voice had the slightest bit of disappointment woven into it. No, thanks, I think I've lost my appetite. Izuku pulled away from the hug. I should go. All right, Aizu, she managed to say, another sad smile on her face. And with that, Izuku walked out the door. Walking to the station was actually the most stressful part of the day so far. Not many people were outside at this time of day, most eating dinner with their families, like Midoriya should have been doing. Instead, he was beating himself up about the whole thing. Of course, he'd been sloppy. It was obvious. It was not, in fact, as obvious as Midoriya thought, but that's irrelevant. He didn't like that far from the police station, which in retrospect, should have been something he was more cautious of. He kept reprimanding himself up about it, before eventually reaching the station. He walked inside and got a few questioning glances from the receptionist, but it wasn't that bad. Hi, I'd like to speak to Detective Tsukachi, he said, hoping he didn't come off as too nervous. Okay, hold on, she presses a button. Tsukachi, some kid's here to see you, she then turns back to Midoriya. He'll be out in a second, please wait in the lobby. And so he sat, waiting. In all reality, he was only waiting for a minute or two, but it felt much longer, probably because he's sitting in a police station's lobby, waiting to talk to a detective that knows of his identity and could make or break his entire life. Although that might be an overstatement. Tsukachi walks out of the back, and his eyes dart immediately to Midoriya. I didn't expect you to come so early, you must forgive me for taking so long. If you'd please follow me to my office, we can chat in peace there. All right, he replies, wanting nothing but to get out of the main lobby, where so many people were staring. The two went down the hall from where Tsukachi came out of. After a minute of walking, the detective stopped in front of a door. Right in here, please. I have to go get the team together, but it won't take long. I'll be right back. As Izuku went inside, Tsukachi started to run down the hall. He hadn't told any of the others that the kid had even admitted yet, much less that he'd come so soon. He ran into a room where 3 of the other detectives were sitting. He's here. Who? Said the first detective. Who do you think? He admitted it all only 10 minutes ago. I didn't expect him to come so soon, replied Tsukachi. So we were right? The second one asked. Yes. Are you not listening? Get the others. He's sitting in my office right now. We don't have much time to get everything done. Yes, sir, the third one said, running out of the room to find the other 2 detectives. When they came back, the 6 started to make their way to Tsukachi's office. When he opened the door, Midoriya was sitting there, playing on his phone. Tsukachi, are you sure this is him? I don't know, I thought, he'd be older. Me? Midoriya looked at the detectives. Yeah, I get that. That's what you're supposed to think. So, Tsukachi, what did you say to him to get him to cooperate with us? Probably something I'll regret later. You seem to have a knack for that, one of the detectives laughed. Hey, why don't you all introduce yourselves while I start filling out the paperwork? All right, fine. I'm Detective Kotani. Over there, we got Detective Kobayashi, Detective Nakamura, Detective Akiyama, and Detective Satoyoshi. Say hi, you all. A chorus of awkward hellos came from the group. Midoriya looked over them. The detectives weren't anything special by any means, but seemed nice enough. Hey, I'm Izuku Midoriya. You probably know that already, though, huh? He rubbed the back of his neck. We had that idea, Kotani said. He turned to the other detectives. Let me do the talking, okay? The other detectives nodded, and he turned back to Midoriya. Sorry, I'm just making sure they won't say something they'll regret. Because they will regret something. Why, yeah, okay. Kotani, tone it down, will you? You're scaring the kid. Oh, come on, Tsukachi. He's a damn vigilante, he can't be scared of me. Kotani, I swear if you aren't going to listen, you aren't going to stay here. The only reason you all are even here is because you helped me find him. I have half a mind to just kick you all out now, he said, without even looking up from his desk. But Tsu, come on. That's it. Not all of you. I told you, you are not calling me that. Kotani and the rest of the detectives looked almost pitiful as they walked out. Sorry about that, Midoriya. They can be difficult at times. It's fine. You didn't have to kick them out. I did. Either way, we're going to be discussing some license matters, and I'm sure you don't want to talk about that in a crowded office. Midoriya nodded. I suppose. Okay, first things first, are you alright with your current name or do you want to change it when you go pro? I guess I'm fine with it, he shrugged. We have to put a civilian name on the card, but it's courtesy to have the option of a nickname. Therefore, what do you want to be called? Who would see the card anyway? Just the police. If pros try to capture you, go with it. They can't touch you, legally. You don't have to show the pros your license, but you would have to show the police. Well, then why not just use my real name then? It's just an option if you'd want to hide your identity further, I suppose. That'd probably be best, I guess. I don't really have any nicknames, could I choose something on the spot? I suppose. A moment passes before he says anything. Alright, well, how about just Midoriya? No first name listed. Is that allowed? Alright, that's fine. Also, Mr. Detective, can I ask why you seem to be hiding this all from the rest of the police? I was wondering why you hadn't asked that yet. Well, you see, I think what you're doing is great. Taking care of those small crimes that are usually overlooked, someone has to do it, right? That sounds extremely suspicious. Oh, okay. What about those other vigilantes, like the Crawler? They're great too. Although I don't approve of their methods, someone has to do it, right? Yeah, they're illegal heroes after all. Walking that thin line between heroes and villains, right? Right. Although they often are more on the side of he stops, as if he just realized who he's talking to. Is something wrong? No. I just remembered I have something to do. I'll get your license mailed to you when it's ready. He stands. We'll talk later, won't we, Mr. Midoriya? He leaves the room with Midoriya still inside. As he was walking back to his apartment, he couldn't stop thinking about what that detective said. He seemed extremely suspicious, and he was regretting getting involved with him. But what else was he to do? That detective knew his identity and had decided to keep it from the rest of the police force, so he was, at least, making an effort to be trusted, right? Maybe he should try and convince Mom to let them move. He was home before he knew it, and after going inside and taking off his shoes, he collapsed on the couch. Inko was still in the kitchen and watched her son come in. Aizu, how was Dash? And he collapsed. Oh, Aizu, are you okay? She ran over to him. I'm fine, I swear. Just tired, I guess. Then let's get you to your bed. She smiled at him. She'll ask more questions after he's slept. I can do it myself, Mom. He sat up and pushed himself off the couch. I'll see you in the morning. Oh, alright. Good night, Aizu. Sweet dreams. He walked down the hallway and went inside his room, closing the door slowly behind him. Inko was really worried about Izuku. He just came back and he's going to bed? He hadn't even ate yet. What happened between that detective and Aizu? Izuku sat on his bed, thinking. His door was locked and he was just sitting there, waiting. He had tore down all his All Might merch long ago, something he's sure his mother was confused about. She probably thinks he's just going through a phase. He'll get his love of heroes back eventually. He stood up, bed creaking from the sudden lack of weight. Walking over to his closet, he pulled out his costume. He wasn't going to go out tonight, that'd prove risky. No, he decided he'd finally repair his suit. It had been through thick and thin, with the damage to boot. It hadn't been maintained the best, against his best efforts. Maybe it was time for an upgrade. Hey Midoriya! Hatsum yelled across the mall. Coming! Give me a sec. He was about to check out, which could probably take a couple more minutes, depending on how chatty the cashier was feeling. His phone buzzed, probably Hatsum after being told to wait. He pulled it out of his pocket, and to no one's surprise, it was in fact Hatsum. What wasn't expected was the video she sent. He opened and clicked play. Well, since you're so busy, I figured I'd just show you now, the video said. She panned up from the floor to the wall, where there was a police sketch of what Black Rabbit might look like as a normal civilian based on witness accounts. He kind of looks like you, right? Albeit older by a long shot, but I'm not crazy for thinking that, yeah? She laughs. The video ends. She wasn't wrong. It looked remarkably like him, which was very, very bad. He quickly texted back. No, you're not crazy. Where are you? Front desk. Wow, helpful. Be right there. All right. See ya. He paid, then literally ran to Hatsum. Sure enough, there she was, right next to the poster. He took one look at it, then turned to Hatsum. Do you mind if we leave, say now? Why? Well, I'm finished shopping and I guess I just don't like how that poster looks so much like me dash. Alright. We can go to my house. Okay, fine by me. Hatsum had a big house, to say the least. Midoriya got lost more than once on the way to her room. And in what was assumably the biggest twist of the day, her room was entirely gadget-free. Hey Midoriya, we need to talk, you know? She looked at him. Can you shut the door after you come in? Yeah, alright. He pushed the door shut, and sat in one of the chairs she had scattered around her room. Well, what is it? Midoriya, I'm not stupid, okay? I know, you're one of the smartest people I know. No, not like that. You're not stupid either, right? You have at least an idea of where this conversation is going. Oh, if dash. He didn't want to believe it, but here it was. Huh? Yeah. He nodded. I suppose. If we're thinking about the same thing, then. So, you're not going to go out and say it? I'll do it then. You're that stupid vigilante the media can't seem to get over, right? He nodded. How long have you known? Almost a month? After that whole, hey Hatsum, can you fix my broken gadgets thing? I pieced it together pretty easily after that. Well, if you know, does that mean Shinso does as well? Not to talk bad about him, but I think he's a little too preoccupied to notice. Maybe, or maybe he does know. Maybe he's just hiding it. No one can tell what he's thinking. Whoa, calm down. You're hyperventilating. I don't get how you do this type of sheet. You're such a mess. You didn't tell anyone, right? No, I kept it to myself. Oh God, what if the teachers know? What if Principal Niza knows? I'd be more than just expelled, I'd be dead. Midoriya, get a grip. You're fine. No one knows, and if they suspect something, they don't have any proof. But what if they do? Midoriya. I know, but what if dash? What if nothing? Everything will be fine. You have nothing to worry about. But dash. But nothing. How many times will I have to tell you? You will be fine. She sounded a lot like Inko, but way more aggressive than his mother could ever be. The yelling isn't helping, you know. That made her stop. Midoriya, I need a sec. To calm down. He looked at Hatsum. I think I'd better go. He got up and walked over to the door and walked out, leaving Hatsum alone, wondering what in the world just happened. It was certainly one of the more abnormal encounters she'd had with him. He went from that nervous teen she'd always known, to someone serious and foreboding she felt like she'd never met, and back to a nervous wreck at the thought that even Shinso would know. Very odd. Midoriya ran out of Hatsum's house. No, actually it's a F-in mansion. He didn't know where he was going, but eventually found a window close enough to the ground he felt comfortable jumping out of to get out. After that, he didn't know where he was going. He just ran and ran and ran until he was greeted by a familiar scene. He ended up just sitting beside the all-too-familiar river, in the all-too-familiar forest, trying desperately to calm himself. It's all just a matter of time now. Midoriya ran out of Hatsum's house. No, actually it's a F-in mansion. He didn't know where he was going, but eventually found a window close enough to the ground he felt comfortable jumping out of to get out. After that, he didn't know where he was going. He just ran and ran and ran until he was greeted by a familiar scene. He ended up just sitting beside the all-too-familiar river, in the all-too-familiar forest, trying desperately to calm himself. Deku? The F are you doing here? Venom laced in his voice, begging for a reaction. Izuku turned around to see Bakugo standing there. He hadn't heard him approach. Nothing, Kaken. I was just enjoying the river. Bakugo smirked. Enjoying the river? Really? What are you doing here then? It took him off guard. None of your business, Shidi Deku. Midoriya chuckled. You really never change, Kaken. You wanna go? He showed off his quirk. If you wanna fight, I'll fight. I'm not inviting you to fight, I'm inviting you to take a beating. He lunged himself at Izuku, with him barely dodging the explosions and falling into the river. Oh great, now I'm effin' wet. He frowned. How effing dare you dodge? But Kaken, it's supposed to be fun for both of us. No, it effing isn't. It's supposed to be fun for me, you're supposed to be begging for your life. Wow, thanks Kaken. Note I found most the drafts but the rest of this page was lost. I'm sorry ABT that. I think it flows well enough to go together but like a sizable chunk of fight was taken out and I ain't writing that again. He knew he couldn't dodge all day, especially with Bakugo. He was getting tired, and Bakugo's blast range was way too close for comfort. With all the noise, it didn't take long for people to take notice of them, and a crowd started to form. Isn't that Bakugo kid? What's he doing attacking that kid? Wait, isn't that Midoriya from the sports festival? I heard he was quirkless. Doesn't mean he ain't strong, but still, I don't understand why someone would attack him. Isn't using your quirk in public illegal? Like, especially if you're not a hero? Yeah, technically. Don't see why he'd knowingly break the law though. Maybe they got beef with each other or something. Whatever y'all, I'm calling the police. He'd been distracted by the crowd. Bakugo took advantage of this by literally sneaking up on him and sending an explosion right in his side. He didn't feel anything, which was the first red flag that went off in his head. He didn't look, he just looked at Bakugo, then the crowd, then he just closed his eyes as pain was starting to set in. He could only think of Bakugo's horrified face of what he'd done while everything faded out. Inko was the first to find out. She didn't want to believe it. Katsuki was a nice little boy, right? She rushed to the hospital, desperate to see her son. The receptionist gave her a worried glance when she asked where he was. He was just in surgery, ma'am. I don't think it's a good idea. A doctor walked down the hall, spotting Inko. Excuse me, you must be Ms. Midoriya? Yes, that's me. What happened to my son? She looked like she was about to cry. We're not exactly sure, but we'll find out soon enough. We're just waiting for Midoriya to wake up so we can get his testimony. So that means he's okay? He's alive, yes. Would you come with me? Of course. She let herself be led down the hall. He should be awake soon. When he wakes up, I'll come and get you. He smiles at her, laced with sadness. He opens the door, then immediately walks back out. What timing? He's awake, Ms. Midoriya. Sure enough, there he was, lying in the bed. He perked up when he saw Inko. Mom. I'm here, Aizu. She ran up to him and was going to hug him, but she saw the bandages wrapped around his torso and hesitated. Aizu, what happened? I messed up. His eyes started watering. I really did it this time, huh? He smiled, contrary to him crying up a storm at the same time. It's okay, Aizu. Just tell me what happened, okay? Okay. He sniffed. I was at Hatsum's, but I left and went to the river because I was stressed. Kaken was there and It's okay, Aizu. Calm down. He was there and wanted to start a fight. I tried to get out of it, but I guess I didn't. Oh, Aizu, You did the best you could, I'm sure. She smiled, sadly, but a smile nonetheless. What was the extent of his injuries? She turned to the doctor that was watching from the door. Well, he picks up a clipboard from the nearby table. He had intense damage to the left side of his torso. In all, he had 2 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a large amount of missing skin, but the rest was easily fixed in surgery. Ah, thank you. He nodded and walked out, leaving Inko and Izuku alone. It looked like Izuku was exhausted. Aizu, you should sleep. I don't dash. Aizu. All right, Mom. He sighed and closed his eyes. Inko sighed. She stepped out of the room and called Mitsuki. Hello. Mitsuki? Did you hear? Hear what? What happened? Katsuki did. He went overboard. Inko, you're leaving me in the dark. What did he do? He hurt Aizu Mitsuki. Worse than just a black eye, like he's done before. Well, where's Katsuki? As far as I've heard, he's at the police station. Aizu's in the hospital. Wait, hold on. Katsuki put Izuku in the hospital? Yes, unfortunately. Look, I don't expect Katsuki to get away scot-free, but I just make sure he doesn't go near my Izuku again. Please. Of course, Inko. I just can't believe it. They used to be such good friends. I guess it just wasn't meant to be, huh? I should go. I'll talk to you later. Bye, Inko. Tell Izuku get well soon from me. I will. Bye, Mitsuki. She hung up. Mitsuki was probably going to release hell on Katsuki, but she really didn't care. He'd gone too far this time. Mom. She jumped and peered back into the room. Yes. You didn't have to do that. He looked up at her. I can handle Katsuki. Most of the time. Aizu. He's hurt you. He's been hurting you, and it's my fault for not doing anything to stop him. This was the final straw. Mom. Just sleep, Aizu. You don't need to worry about anything right now. I'll fix this, I swear. Mom. Inko looked away from her phone to see her Aizu awake again. Good morning. She smiled. The doctors said you'll be fine. Okay. There was silence. Then Inko decided to speak up. Hey Aizu, when were you going to tell me? What? About Katsuki. When were you going to tell me it escalated this much? Hopefully never. I didn't want you to find out and be worried. As your mother, it is my job to be worried about you, Aizu. There's only so much I can do when you don't tell me things. I called the school and told them to keep Katsuki away from you. Last Mitsuki told me they're thinking about expelling him. They can't do that. Aizu, you have to understand what he did to you, from when it started up until now, is incriminating evidence. Look, the schools do know about all the bullying. It's on Katsuki's permanent record. He went too far, everyone agrees. Mom, it's his dream, I can't get in the way of that. You're too forgiving for your own good. Inko looked up at her son. If something like this happens ever again, make sure to tell me. Please, for my sake, don't let anything get to this point again. Again, silence. He didn't answer. Is there anything else I should know about? A pause, but he eventually did speak. Probably. Do you want to tell me? No. He looked away from his mother. All right. She knew he'd tell her later. He didn't return to UA for a full month. Shinso checked in on him every couple days, but with finals coming up, it was getting harder and harder for him to make time. Hatsum avoided him. The public noticed the missing vigilante, and the few conspiracy theorists out there connected his disappearance to Midoriya himself. The dates just lined up, but most people scoffed at this, saying it had to just be a coincidence. Black Rabbit would have to have been much older. Izuku never really talked to Katsuki again. When Mitsuki'd come over, she'd make sure he'd stay at home or was out with his friends. The last thing she needed to deal with was a full-on murder charge from her son. Detective Tsukachi got a hold of Midoriya's phone number and texted him updates on how far progress on his license was going. Now, it just needed to be approved by the Hero Association, but he'd try to pull a few strings so that it wouldn't be too much to ask from them. Midoriya had to rest. He was told to stay in a wheelchair for 6 weeks, and that he wasn't allowed to do any sort of physical activity until his new physical therapist said he could. He didn't like it. A year after the incident, He didn't really talk to Hatsum anymore. She just waved in the halls, but they didn't speak to each other or sit with each other at lunch. Shinso stayed with Midoriya, but was sad to see Hatsum stop talking to him too. After all of this, Midoriya finally told his mother about his nightly activities. She was speechless. She thought he'd been just sneaking out to go to parties or something, not trying to serve out his own form of justice. She hugged him while he broke down sobbing. He couldn't apologize enough, and was saying sorry until he fell asleep in her arms. When Shinso found out, he texted Hatsum and asked her if she had known. She said yes. That was the last the two heard from her. Shinso and Midoriya both went on to become heroes like they wanted. Midoriya's hero name was changed to just Kuro, and Shinso decided to call himself Mockingbird. They worked together in creating their own agency. They'd stayed best friends, and Midoriya told him everything from now on. And the public never really realized that Midoriya had ever been Black Rabbit. They loved Kuro and Mockingbird's team, but no one connected the dots. He never worried about it, and if he did, he could call Tsukachi, who'd become one of his friends after everything was done. When Kuro saw a vigilante roaming around, he'd talk to them. He'd try to help, encourage them even. He told them if they ever needed, he'd be willing to help. After all, he knew what it was like. And that was that. High on a rooftop on one of many skyscrapers in...
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.